Well, welcome to another Live with Dr. Rick. We do these to encourage you and support you in your marriage and family. We do these because we care about your home, what you do in your home, because nobody gets married to be miserable. I know I didn't. Luella and I both grew up in broken homes, so we didn't want to replicate a generational curse of divorce and addictions and craziness, and we didn't. 37 years marriage, very strong, healthy marriage. And we've have three wonderful children and adults and very mature, love them well, raised them on the things that I teach publicly, are written in my book and written into the Right Well curriculum. I raised them on those things and hope that they would have the skills and abilities. Now, I got to make a side note. Notice that cough? We, the family, me, my wife, my son, and daughter-in-law, we all live together here in Jacksonville, all just got through COVID. And so I'm going to have a residue of a cough for a while. According to the doctor, just get used to it. And so if you hear me coughing, that's where it's coming from. Just overlook it. The good thing is I'm on the other side of bad, And so anyways, it was an interesting journey. I'm going to do another talk about my ponderings and realizations coming through COVID together as a family, having gone through it together, all of us having it, and some things that I learned and realized. Actually, I'm glad I took the opportunity to kind of think and reflect. Of course, when you're got nothing to do but lay down and sleep 15 hours a day and you're aching and all that kind of stuff, you do tend to ponder about some things. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the things I realized about my life and where I'm at today. And so I love sharing that with you to encourage you and inspire you in your marriage and in your family. All right. Excuse me. Today, forgive me, it's going to be very informal. Got my water here. I'm going to be coughing. But you know what? We'll get through it. We'll get through it. Now, what are some things you should never do when arguing? All right. Things you should never do when you're in an argument with your spouse. Now, let's be honest. I'm married 37 years. I'm 59 years old. And my first marriage, we have a strong, healthy marriage. We live by a principle that we call us. Us wins, you both win. Us loses, you both lose. My wife and I are pretty strong us, in my personal opinion. I think she would say the same thing. Yet, in all those years of marriage, we've had conflict. Sometimes worse, sometimes not as worse. Some years were worse than other years. Looking back at the whole of 37 years, I'm the man I am today because I chose to walk through those paths, learn the things I need to learn, particularly about myself. And I began to live a life based on 4 core principles: goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. And I tend to regulate my life based on those 4 principles. Is what I'm doing right now goodwill? Is it respectful? Is it caring? Empathy? In order to do that, I got to live a life of humility. Pride will destroy in us, but it'll always make you feel good about you. You get the idea. But you know what I've learned? Conflict inevitable. Whenever you have 2 people, you're going to have conflict because they're not always going to agree. They're not always going to get along. They're not always going to have the same vision or heart or understanding. That's just life. Conflict is inevitable. Get used to it. And if you're a conflict avoider, you're not living in reality. You're not living in reality. Avoiding conflict, also known as appeasing, placating, never really actually solves the problem. It just prolongs it, makes it worse over time. So avoiding conflict is not a solution, actually. I mean, it can be if you want it to be, but I'm here to tell you it really isn't a long-term solution, right? Conflict avoidance just means you're going to deal with it at some point later. But when you do deal with it later, whenever that later is, things have gotten worse by that time. All right. The other part is you got to deal with conflict, but you want to deal with it in healthy, mature ways. And one of the core of Relate Well is one of our trademarked ideas of the four protectors of an us: goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. All right. They are the central core of how I lived my life growing up, particularly in my marriage, in my life as an adult, so that I can create the healthy, strong sense of usness that I want. All right. What we call the power of us. And when you live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy in all aspects of your life, you'll actually deal with conflict, but you'll deal with them with goodwill. You'll deal with the issues with respect. You'll be caring. And in order to do that, you've got to move to humility. And if you've been studying anything at the global level in leadership, it's very clear that the great leaders of tomorrow, you want to be a great leader for tomorrow, you're going to have to move to empathy and humility. That's right. Two buzzwords today in leadership at the organizational, at the global level, is move to empathy, move to humility. Interesting. Two of the four words that we've tried to live by and Relate Well all these years. Now, what are some things you never want to do? All right, so you've got to deal with conflict, but here are some things you don't want to do. Now, in Relate Well, we actually teach you what to do. All right, that's the idea. We teach you how to emotionally regulate. We teach you how to connect, how to bond, those kind of things. All right, but here's some things you never want to do. All right, and by the way, whenever you do the things we're about to talk about, these 8 particular things, they're actually coming from this lower order part of your brain down here, known as the reptilian brain by some. It's where the fight, flight, or freeze response comes from. This is where you get triggered at 1/200th of a second into a defensive posture. Let me tell you how quickly that defensive posture works. Yesterday, right now, I'm just getting over COVID. We've had a bad case of COVID here at our house. My wife has had it. I had it. My son and my daughter-in-law. So we're just now we're on the other side of bad. All right. So I'm up and about and producing more some videos. Finally, after about being down for about a month with COVID. All right. And so yesterday I felt pretty good. So I get up to go out, just to get out. So I go get in my car, past the driver door still open, and there it is right over here, driver's side, passenger side window, a 2-inch wasp flying in my car. I'm like, oh no, don't like wasps, don't like bees. I stay away from them, right? I remember when I was a kid, it got stung. I think I was allergic, if I recall. Anyways, so I open up the windows, open up the sunroof, and then it comes at me. Did I do the freeze response? The freeze response, when I would have sat there and just froze and let it go on by. I could have gone to the fight response. I could have attacked it. All right. If it came towards me, I could have attacked it. I could have tried to hit it or something. But no. My brain goes, run. And I kid you not, when it came at me in my car, I didn't step out. I hurled myself out backwards onto the driveway, busted up my elbow and my knee. And I'm laying there looking for that thing. And I'm up off the ground, searching my car for it, bleeding like crazy. That is the flight response. All right. And so you don't want to deal with conflict from fight, flight, or freeze. I promise you. You might avoid conflict or attack it, whatever, but you're not going to solve a problem well. So here's some things you never do. All right. Number one, you never, ever, 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 ever do anything of ill will or disrespect that makes your spouse feel unsafe. No physical intimidation, no physical aggression, no physical threats, no emotional manipulations or put downs. If I cannot feel safe with you, even in an argument, then you are teaching me not to argue over time. So never do anything out of ill will or disrespect that creates an environment where your partner cannot feel safe with you. Got it? Domestic violence out the door. You with me? No emotional put downs, manipulations, gaslighting. All of that creates an environment where the relationship is not a safe place. And if the relationship is not a safe place because of what you're doing, then I have learned that I can't trust you with my heart because you are not trustworthy with my heart. It's almost like we all need to be able to take our hearts and put them out here and say, well, this is me. This is my hurts. These are my fears. These are my joys. These are my passions. This is me. And that I feel so secure in the marriage, I can place my heart in her hands, knowing that even if she may disagree with some of the things that are in my heart, she'd take care of it. I want to be that guy for Luella. I want to be that guy for my wife, for my kids. So first thing, never do anything out of ill will or respect that sends a message your spouse is not safe with you. Okay, that'll lead to another thing. Don't call each other names. Don't call each other names. No put downs. No put downs. No name calling. No labeling. No mocking. No mimicking. Don't call people names. It's disrespectful. There's no goodwill in it. And if you call people names, what you're really doing is a form of contempt. You're basically saying that I'm better than you and you're worse than me. I'm morally superior to you, you're less than me. And if you really want to live your life that way, feel free. I mean, you can. But don't assume that you're going to have a healthy, loving marriage and you're not going to solve problems well at all. So, a second thing you never want to do, you don't call names, all right? It's just mean. It's just mean. There's no goodwill in it. However, if you call them names, you'll feel superior. You'll feel better about you. You'll feel less about them, but that's okay. The goal here in calling names isn't to build a relationship. It's to invalidate. It's to put down. It's to tear. It's to destroy. So you'll feel good about that. Another thing to do is, though we don't want you calling names, listen up on this one now. Number three. Luella, in the early years of our marriage, did this twice. I have never done this in 37 years. But Luella did it twice in the early years in frustration and an argument. Never throw out the word divorce unless you're willing to do it. Early in our marriage, twice, I think in the first 6 years, in frustration, Luella made a comment. Well, maybe we should just divorce, or maybe we should just split up. And I'm like, how do we go from A to this, right? From A to D, the D word. How do we get there? You see, I grew up in divorce, so Luella. So divorce is never going to be an option for me. I loved her. Yeah, we may have issues. I was very immature back in those early days of our marriage, but I still loved her enough, and I knew we were going to make it. Why? Why would I want to throw away the relationship with my best friend? That doesn't make sense to me. But she threw it out twice. And I forgave both of them. I really did. But what I did not know is this. Unconsciously, the second time, even though I forgave it, it left a question mark in my unconscious mind. Well, what would it take for you to leave me then? In other words, it left a level of insecurity that she was actually committed and dedicated to us. That at some point, something might go a way that was not the way she wanted, and I was going to lose everything. So what I ended up realizing years later, when I got a revelation that this is actually in my heart still, I started holding parts of myself back from her, just in case she might leave me one day. You see, when you throw out the word divorce, those kind of things, that suggest there's not a long-term commitment here. This isn't really till death do us part. This is just till I'm frustrated enough that I'm leaving. What you're actually sending the message to your spouse is, I am committed as long as I get my way, my needs met my way, whatever. I told Will early in the marriage, and I jokingly said it, but I actually meant it. If you ever leave me, I'm going with you. All right, I'm going with you. Don't throw out the word divorce. If you need to separate and go get some space, go do that. That still implies we're still together. We can still be an us. But if you don't throw out the word divorce, you understand you're sending a very strong message to a marriage that was supposed to be till death do us part, that you both committed to love long term, unconditionally. So number three, don't use the D word. Don't go throwing that out. I get you're frustrated, and I get that sometimes you're not sure what to do, you feel stuck or whatever. I get all that, and I'm actually okay with all that. In Relate Well, we actually teach you what to do and how to get unstuck and make better choices, and we show you how to do what you want to do, so you can create what you want. All right. Another thing is it's the old joke you always hear a lot of times. It goes something like this: two guys were talking about their spouses, and one guy says to his buddy, he says, "Yeah, every time my wife gets mad, she gets historical." He goes, "You mean hysterical?" He goes, "No, she gets historical. She brings up everything from the past." Funny little joke, but there's a reality. Um, if it's in the past and it's been forgiven, leave it there. Don't keep bringing up things from history. If you continue to bring things up from history, you can justify it all you want. However, it still leaves the idea that whatever has happened in the past is unresolved, it is still alive and unforgiven. Thus, the things you keep bringing up on a regular basis that are from history actually emotionally are still very much alive. You see, when you forgive, then that means you let it go. One of my youngest son many years ago, he came to me. He said, "Dad, I want to thank you for something." I said, "What's that?" He said, I think he was around 20, 21 at the time, 19, something like 19, 20, 21. He said to me, he goes, "When we were always growing up and you disciplined us, you always told us you're forgiven. This will never be brought up again. It's a dead issue. If it comes up again, it'll just be a new issue." And I did say those things. And he thanked me for that. He said, "Why are you thanking me for?" He goes, "You never did. You always let it go." I said, "Yes, son, because when you forgive something, you choose to not remember anymore. Why? Because you want to move on. You want to move on. I'd rather have the relationship than stay in resentment and bitterness. You see, in forgiveness, I say it this way, since I'm also a minister, we're never more like God than when we forgive. And forgiveness, you'll find, is actually more for your healing than it is for the healing of the relationship. Relationship takes two people, but me forgiving is about me and my self-care, and about it has to do with what I want to bring to the relationship. And so don't bring up old stuff. Forgive. Let things go. And when you decide to forgive, it's a dead issue. If something happens again, it's a new issue. Forgive that. If it happens again, it's a new issue. If it continues to happen, that's what you call a pattern of behavior. And patterns of behavior are indicative of something going on in one's soul that needs to be dealt with. Get it? Distinguish between something that I do and patterns of behavior. All right. And so one of the things you don't want to do, don't go bringing up history. All right. Don't bring up history. Stuff in the past, leave it in the past. Forgive, move forward. All right. Whenever you live in the past, it's like an emotional umbilical cord. Now that's kind of an odd looking metaphor, but that's what I like to think. It's like an emotional umbilical cord you have stuck back there to those people, to that event, whatever. And as long as you keep living back there, guess where you can't live? Emotionally fully present right here, right now, because your emotional brain is divided. Mature people know how to live life fully in the present. To do that, they also learn to forgive. And they also understand that to forgive is respectful and is goodwill. Another thing you never, ever, ever, ever want to do, ever, is use the words like never, ever, always, should, shouldn't. Those words, those words that are basically extremes. There's a great counselor, a field of school, I think it was Albert Ellis. Now, take this with goodwill. But one of the things that Ellis always taught was that how we think has a lot to do with how our mental and emotional health is going to be. And that one reason people have emotional and mental problems is because they think in terms of, well, I should always be liked. Everyone is supposed to care about me. I should always make everybody happy. Hear those phrases? He called that living a life a must. All right, he called it masturbation. That was his name for it. But I thought it was a pretty interesting term that a lot of people live in the musts of the world. You should this, you should that. It must be this way. It can never be that way. That's pretty black and white thinking, and it's a very shallow way to live life. You see, learn to use words. It seems to me that it's this way more often than not. There tends to be a pattern of this, I notice. All right, those kind of things. So when I say never, ever, ever, ever use words like never, should, I just violated my own rule, didn't I? So, but you don't want to use those things. All right, there's other ways to express yourself. Is my point here, and you can always use other phrases like, I'd like to see you do this. I'd like for this to happen. Sometimes I feel that it seems to be this way. Sometimes it comes across that way. Those are phrases you can use to get out of the extreme language. All right, because I can tell you why. If you say to me, well, you've never done A, excuse me. If you say, Rick, you've never done A, whatever A might be, I bet I could come up with a time in my life where I did it once. And if I couldn't, I'd do it just to lie to prove you wrong. That's what that language does. All right. Why create language that puts people on the defensive? There's no goodwill in it, and it's not respectful. All right. Now, we've already talked about don't throw out names, calling, don't throw the D word. All right. When it comes to arguing, another point here. When it comes to arguing, never attack your partner. Deal with the issue. Deal with the issue. Don't attack your partner. Deal with the issue itself. It's kind of think of it this way. Here's me, and let's say my wife is right here, and here's Luella. So here's me, and here's Luella, and let's say this pen is an issue that we have. Now we're going to put this pen out here. So I have thoughts and feelings about this. Luella has thoughts and feelings about this. So my thoughts and feelings about this issue and her thoughts and feelings about this issue aren't the same. They're actually different. And if you want to solve conflict, you have to honor all three. We have to deal with the issue for sure, but I need to respect and honor her thoughts and feelings about this issue. And she needs to be able to respect my thoughts and feelings about this issue. What usually happens, though, when couples get into arguing in unhealthy ways, what that lower order animal brain does, it takes this issue, and what it does, it then attaches it to your partner. So when you're arguing from the lower order animal brain, fight, flight, or freeze, all those we call fighting with ill will, whenever you're arguing from this lower order brain, I'm no longer talking about this anymore. You know what I'm talking about? You, Luella, and you, Luella, and you, Luella. And she's in that lower order animal brain. And so she's, well, you, Rick, and you, Rick, and you, Rick. And guess what never gets discussed? The issue. You know what maturity does? Maturity kind of goes like this. It's like I put my arm around my bride here. I go, hey, honey, can you and I talk about this issue? Can you and I talk about this issue? In other words, we want to talk about this. That takes maturity. It takes goodwill. It takes respect. It takes care and requires humility to do all that. And when we can talk about this issue, we can solve this issue. And when we solve this issue, the issue is solved and us is intact. As a matter of fact, not only is us intact, us is stronger, more connected, more energized because we solve the problem together so that we won. That's the real trick of healthy, mature people is that they learn to solve conflict in a way that protects their usness. So the only way you can do that then is just stick to the point, deal with the issue. Don't attack. Don't tear down. Honor and respect your partner's perspective on things. Here's research by Gottman. John Gottman, the biggest researcher. What percentage of problems in a marriage cannot be solved? Actually, are unsolvable? 68, 2/3. 2/3 of problems in a marriage just are unsolvable. But what Gottman found in what he called, what he watched, what he studied, what he know, I can't even talk. In his studying what he called masterful couples, what he found out was really healthy, mature couples don't allow issues that are unsolvable to destroy the relationship. They just negotiate around the unsolvable problems. Why? Because they'd rather agree to disagree and have a relationship than try and win an argument. All right, and so that leads to the next point. Then is always focus on the point, which also then means keep your focus when arguing on the issue and a solution, not on each other. Not on each other. All right. And if you live this way, and you don't let these things happen, you're gonna be able to solve problems and deal with issues in a pretty healthy, mature way. What you're really gonna be saying is, I love you so much, and you love me so much, and we recognize we're gonna have issues. That's part of life. We're gonna have issues. However, I care so much about our love that I will protect our love from a problem. Why? Because problems are a part of life. Get used to it. But what matters is that we solve problems and deal with conflict in a way that protects the love. I refer to that as the usness in the marriage that protects the love. I didn't grow up in a home that way. You needed to love them. We never saw it modeled. I came to faith and right out of high school, so I've been in the church as well. Didn't see a lot in churches as well, in Christian marriages. Don't see it a lot in society, do you? You don't see it with bosses solving problems with their employees. You don't see it in leadership. What you see is a need for power, the need for control, the need to use others and exploit others to get one's way. I'm not saying you can't live that way. You can. But when it comes to a marriage relationship, if you want to live that way, feel free. But you understand you're destroying your relationship. You're destroying us. You see, there's only two decisions. Every decision you make goes one way or the other, whether you like it or not. Every decision you make gives to you or gives to us. If the bulk of your decisions are based on what's best for you, feel free. Us will die. It will die off. Jay Shetty in his book, Think Like a Monk. And I encourage you to get the book. There's a lot of great, profound truths that he learned as a young man living as a monk. And now he shares around the world. But he's absolutely right about something. He said what he learned as a monk is that the highest way of living life is not for oneself. The highest way of living life is to live for others, is to serve. And that those who understand that life is about serving others, those are the people who always find the greatest fulfillment and peace in life. Most people, though, are still learning to live for themselves, and they've never really learned to serve others. You see, the great gift you give life is to live beyond yourself. Live for your spouse, live for us. It has a higher meaning, it has a higher value. And every day you get to make that choice just as much as I do. Have a great day.